Hey folks, welcome back. Beginner Bob here again. This is going to be part 2 of the do-it-yourself double barrel stove build. So if you missed part 1, by all means go back and check it out. So this is the full version and how to build a stove for your shop or your garage or whatever you got going on. So we're almost done and hope you enjoy all the way to the end. All right, I've got the nuts welded in and those are secure, so I'm not too concerned about the feet now. The second thing I need to look at is putting the upper barrel feet on and the location. And here's what I'm getting at. Originally, this opening was going to be the back of my barrel, just like I did over on my other one. But there is a small taper right here. You can kind of see it. And if I would have put that taper back here, it would not have lined up. There would not have been enough space for this dampener. So that's fine. It still is going to work. So I'm going to make this the front of the heat exchanger. And the back is going to be back here. However, this barrel is slightly longer. So these are the things that I'm pointing out that if you have barrels that you've purchased, just to take into consideration when you're measuring all this out. Because what I want to do is I want to make sure that that little lip right there, that taper that's going on, I want the foot right almost at where that taper begins. So I'm going to figure out where that is on here, line all that up, and on the back end, I just want to make sure that I'm going to be clear of the pipe coming between the bottom barrel and the upper barrel and get that straightened out. A note on these double barrel kits. So these are cast legs and they do not have contours of the barrel, the radius of the barrel. These are just flat. So one of the things I've done is, you can see if it just sits on there, it kind of leans forward. So one of the things I've done is I just have a little Harbor Freight sander. It's cheap and easy. And I'm actually putting a radius in the legs so they closely or closer match the barrels. And they'll sit straighter on the barrel once everything is done. So let me get this lined out, measure it. And I'm also going to secure these legs to the barrel, meaning I'll probably weld the nuts to the inside, and we'll go from there. Okay, I've got the legs on. I've got them bolted in. I have not welded the upper legs in yet, because I want to go over a couple things where it's pretty much make or break. First thing I got to do is I got to get this barrel stripped out so that I can get it down to bare metal. Second thing I got to do is I got to mark the holes for the uppers and in the back and get that marked out so that I can weld the nut into the inside of the barrel and in the back. This is one of the reasons why I left the lid off and open, because I need to be able to get access into this barrel so that I can weld those nuts. Now, let me just state this. Once you reach the point of welding or putting the legs on, that's it. Once this is set in place and you're going to put the legs on, you have to leave it that way till the very end. Here's why. Because if you think that you're going to be able to screw the legs on, don't forget you have to put a pipe in between here to connect the top and the bottom. So you have no access in here unless you want to crawl inside. And I'll be honest with you, I did that on my first one, but it was not fun. So I went back and I said, how would I do this again? Well, if I assemble it and I get the upper and the lower together, and what I mean by that is put this in, get everything done. Once this is secured in and I'm happy with it, then I'm going to bring over the front lid and I'll start putting the pipes in. And that way the pipes will be welded in and it'll be a permanent fixture. So this lid will never come off again once those pipes go in and start getting welded. So, like I said, I have to strip this down first, get it to bare metal. I'm debating on painting it before I go through all this other stuff. If I leave it bare metal, all I got to do is mask off the legs to paint and mask off the upper section. It's going to be a custom paint job anyway, so I may end up doing that. But I have to get the hole into the upper barrel, the heat exchanger. I have to mount the legs into the upper barrel, the heat exchanger. And once I get to there, it's just a matter of thinking through it. So here's where I'm at so far. And we'll go from there. So let's talk heat exchanger real quick. One of the things I did in my stove over there is that I had split the upper barrel in half and I had put a plate in between with some holes, because what I was trying to do is, as the smoke came into the first chamber, I'm calling it a chamber because there's a plate in the middle, the smoke would heat the pipes in the lower end, circulate into the upper end, and then exit out the hole in the top. Well, I want to keep that same baffle plate idea, but I don't want to split the barrel in half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld some points on the inside of the barrels, some rebar or something like that, that I can have this plate sit on. So I have to make this plate. This is just going to be a baffle plate. All it's doing is I'm trying to keep the smoke, the heat, inside this heat exchanger for as long as possible. I want to get those pipes heated up. And if I just let the smoke go from the back end and straight out the top end, nothing in the front would heat up. So that's why I put the baffle plate in there. Now, along with that, once I get that plate done, there's another little project I want to do, because I have this extra steel left over and I'm running low, so I want to conserve as much as I can. This air inlet, so when I open this, the air is going to go inside, and on the inside I'm going to have sand in the bottom to protect the bottom, and then I'm going to have fire brick over the top of the sand. I did the same thing on my stove over there, and it actually worked out really well. However, because I have this air inlet right here, I want to make a little air box. So a box that will allow freely that air to come in, and I can pour sand around it and then put the fire brick around it so that that's just free air flowing in there. And I'm only going to go in about 3 or 4 inches, but I think it'll work out good. I have some expanded metal that I can cover the top of it just to prevent as much debris as possible. I know ash will get down in there, but if it does, I can easily vacuum it out through the hole. So I'm going to get going on this and see how it turns out as an air box. Okay, so here's that box I made. Like I said, I just had some extra sheet metal and some expanded metal saved. Cleaned up my welds, and what I'm going to do with this is I'll grind that out to get down to the bare metal, and then I'll put that in there like that. So that'll be welded in there as well. And then when the air comes in, it'll just have some free circulation going into the stove. So again, underneath there'll be sand on the bottom, and then fire brick stacked on top of the sand. So it should come up just below the lip of this box, estimated. And that was the whole idea. Well, guess what? I decided to make something else for the stove. Again, I had a lot of this expanded metal just saved from other projects. So what I did is I put together this little platform, and just some rebar, scrap steel that I have left over, and you know, I wanted to make it kind of nice, clean it up a little bit. And the whole point of this is I have wished that, you know, I could throw my gloves on something to keep it warm, just to kind of dry things out, or, you know, put a hot pot of water or something. Anyway, where it's going, it'll go on this stove on the upper barrel, but let me show you where it would go on my stove. So when I make another one, it'll sit right up there, just like that. So it's not going to get direct heat from the fire, but it will get a lot of this radiant heat that's heating the pipes, and it sits up there nicely, just high enough, and it just puts out just enough warmth to dry your gloves or anything you might need like that. So nice little addition. I know it's overkill. Trust me, I know all of this is overkill, but hey, it's good stuff. It's for fun, and it's American made. Why not? So there's that. I need to take a break from stripping for a little bit, just because my Avante wheel, my stripper wheel, it wore down to the nub, so I need to get another one. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on cutting my pipes. So the way I have it set up is that I had to purchase 7 10-foot long 2.5-inch pipe for the heat exchanger, which is what this is. Now by ordering 7, I'm going to have excess. So that short stubby one you see on the floor is from a previous buy. So you're going to have extra, and just to keep in mind. But the way I'm doing this is I'm going to measure from the ground, in this case on my board, and I need to measure approximately 35 3/8. I want to go to the very top and the very bottom. So that's how long that pipe is going to be, because I want it to be flush with both ends. So I've got it set up. This is a little Harbor Freight saw, and listen, I've had this thing for 5 years and it works great. If you don't have one, go get one. They're pretty easy. So I'm marking off my 35 3/8 roughly, get it lined up there, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut 20 of these tubes out for my heat exchanger. So we'll get going. I've got the upper barrel stripped down where I need it. I've got it set back on the bottom barrel. I'm already drilled the holes and I put the nuts in there, and they're just in there loose, as you can see the ones in the back. I stripped all that paint out, and I've got everything just snug down right now, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to line up the hole for the upper section. And what I did right here is, I know I didn't use the one with the damper on it because that damper's in the way, but I used the next one, which will go on the other tank there. And all I'm doing is I'm taking my pen and I'm just doing a rough outline. You can kind of see how rough it really is. I'm just trying to keep that pen as straight as possible, and I'm going to go all the way around as best I can. I'm just getting a rough reference so that when it's done, I'll have a basic hole that I can try and line up to. I'm also going to try and put a mark on both sides, so I kind of know where the outer edge of that lies, because when I take that upper barrel off, I need to line that up and cut that hole out. So let's go there. So I jumped ahead a little bit and I went ahead and painted the barrel on the bottom, the fire barrel. I just wanted to get that out of the way because the bottom barrel is basically finished except for adding the hardware like the door and the custom paint job I'm going to do, which was specific of what my uncle was asking for. So what I'm going to do next is I have to get the legs on because I want to seal those holes where the legs are going to go. I've already sealed the damper plate, and I took the plate out so that I could reach the holes from the inside just by sticking my hand underneath. And I'm going to get those legs secured on the bottom barrel. Once those legs are on there, they're not coming off. Then I'm going to put the inlet on here, I'm going to seal around that hole and put that inlet plate on, which is right there. And I also made the pipe for in between the two barrels. Now this is a 6-inch pipe, so if you just have to have 6-inch, go ahead and use it. But as you can see, I welded mine because I wanted a snug fit. So I wanted to make sure that this is going to be sealed on the top and on the bottom. So that's why I kind of custom made this, which is no big deal. But like I said, it is 6-inch and it can be used just like that. So I'm going to get some legs on, get everything sealed up. I'll flip that top on and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, I've got the barrel secured on the top. I've got the pipe connected from the bottom to the top. As you can see, I did paint the underside. I've got the bolts in, so everything's secured. And let me show you what I'm doing right now. So I've got everything secured, and I went ahead and welded these nuts on. Here's the situation with this whole upper barrel and screwing it on. The reason I welded the nuts was because I thought that I could take the top barrel off and finish it and then screw it back together. The problem is that the way this cast is made and where they had drilled the holes, to get a screwdriver in there, it's at a very sharp angle. I'm not going to be able to get the teeth from the screw, the Phillips head, in there enough to tighten it down. So I've welded the nuts just for extra security, but it's now a permanent structure. So the top and the bottom are now together as one and they won't come apart. The next thing I'm doing is I was going to put the baffle plate in. As you can see, I put a bar across the back right here, and I'm about to put a bar across the center section right here. And all I did is I had, this is probably, I don't know, a little larger than 3/8, maybe 1/4 inch. Anyway, it's just some extra steel I had left over. It's just round stock. And so what I did is I already put the back one in. I drilled a hole on both sides and put the shaft all the way through. So I've drilled a hole right here. I'm going to slide this in. And I'm going to put that one in there. That way I have that sitting flush on there. So I'm going to weld on the outside and get that situated. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm going to take this extra steel I had left over. Here's just a sample. And I'm going to put it in here. And it'll go up against the wall on both ends. It'll be up against the back end. But what's happening is that smoke will now stay in here longer. It'll hit that first baffle, come forward, come around to the top, and then it'll exit out the top once I get that top hole cut in. The reason I did it on the inside like this is because on my original stove, I had split the barrel in half. And if you saw my previous videos, there's a plate in here, and the plate has 2 large holes at this end so that the smoke comes into the first chamber, comes up, cycles around, and goes out the stack. I did it that way, thinking that that was the best way of doing it. It was a lot of welding, and what I've noticed running this fire, it runs great and it runs hot. The bottom pipes stay hotter than the upper pipes right off the bat. When I turn the fan on, it actually cools the upper pipes sooner than it does the bottom pipes, obviously. So instead of running the plate all the way along to the end, I'm only going 3/4 of the way. So the plate's going to stop on the new one about right here, and it's going to be completely open on the front. So the smoke will come in, hit the baffle, work its way around, come back up, and then it'll go out the stack. And like I said, I'm just trying to keep the heat in as much as I can, just as long as I can, because I want to heat those pipes. Now, granted, I could have just left it where I put the opening on that end and I put the opening on this end, and then the exit would be right here. I don't like the pipe being in the front like that. So as you see on my old stove, I like the pipe being in the back because it's going to go up into the ceiling, and I just like how that worked out for me much better. All right, I've got the baffle plate in. It's welded up. As you can see, I've used several different pieces of sheet metal, and I even had to use a piece of angle. And part of the reason for that is that I didn't have enough sheet metal to span the entire width of the barrel. But, you know, by using that piece of angle right there, it'll actually stiffen it up, and it won't be interfering with the pipe going in. As you can see, it goes all the way to the back and doesn't interfere with the hole. So again, just so we're clear, the fire's right here. The heat goes up through the bottom of the pipe. I'm keeping it in this area as long as I possibly can. It will circle around to the top section, and then it will exit out the top. So by doing it this way, I did not have to split the barrel in half, as you can see, like I did on my original one. So that's a benefit. You know, you learn as you go. And I think this is going to turn out pretty nice. So just a couple of welds you see instead of an entire seam. Structure of the barrel stays good. And hey, it's looking good for me. So I'm happy with it right now. Now I'm going to put the front lid on, and I'm going to start lining up the pipes that will go in, and we'll get that situated. I wanted to show you real quick what I was doing with these pipes. So I have all my pipes pre-cut to the length that I wanted, and I'm sliding them individually into the holes. So as you can see, the pipe's going to go all the way through. So to help me out, I just took one of my little broom handles and I placed it in the pipe so that I could line it up with the other end of the hole. And then I come around here to the other side. And then just be careful you don't cut your fingers. Normally I'm wearing gloves. I'm going to slide that in there like that. That's going to come out just enough. And then I can remove it. And when I get to the point of being done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to square up all the pipes on the front with the top and the bottom of the flange right there. And that way all the pipes will be flush right across the front there, and then I can start tacking each one into place. I just want to tack it because if I put too much heat in this plate, it's so thin that it'll start to warp. And on mine, even though I did tack it, I probably spent a little bit too much time in one area going around the pipe, and it did warp it quite a bit. So again, lesson learned. And this is how I'm installing all the pipes. Okay, so I've got all the tubes in. I made everything flush to the edge, as you can see. And all I've done is I've tacked 3 tacks around each tube, around the front and back. And yes, there are some holes. So you can see right there, I did a little blow through, and I'll just have to fill that in. But this metal, again, on the lid and on the back end is so thin that it is very difficult to try and get it right. Right now I have my welder set on almost the lowest setting, and I'm just trying to tack it to keep that warpage down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and just do sections of each tube, probably in quarters or thirds or something like that, so that I can keep that heat dissipated throughout the entire barrel. And then I'll be done with the pipes. So I'm going to get going on that. Alright, so I've jumped ahead a little bit. I got the pipes welded and finished, and then I went ahead and put the little heater rack or the warmth rack on top. I've got that welded on. I'm doing a base coat with this black paint, so I can do some different color when it gets here. As far as how the welds went on the pipe, the back of the barrel, which is right here, the welds worked out just fine because it is a good, solid steel right there on the back. However, the lid was not so successful. A lot of blow through the holes, and the welds look like dog crap to me, but I cleaned them up as best I could, and they work. They're sealed. I ran a flashlight in there just to make sure I didn't see any pinholes, and so far so good. So I've just put like I said, a coat of paint on, and I'm going to look at taping out kind of a pinstripe design, and there'll be a different color added, and we'll go to there next. Okay, so like I said before, I was going to do a custom paint job on this. What my uncle was asking for is that he wanted it to be black and orange. So how do you come up with black and orange? Well, I'm not really sure. So one of the ideas I'm coming up with is I'm going to take both barrels, so it's going to be a mirror image from bottom to top, and I'm starting with this blue tape, and I'm just putting a paint or a tape stripe across there. That's going to be black. Okay, let me flip around to the other side, and I'll show you where I'm at with the other side. I went to the auto parts store, and I got some painter's tape. It's the green one, and what I did is I kind of threw a little curve or a little arc in there on the front that'll go all the way in the back. So what that means is that when I paint this area right here, this is all going to be orange in the middle. And then when I peel this blue stripe off, this blue tape, there'll be a black pinstripe down the middle of the orange. Now I have no guarantee that this is going to work, but as beginner Bob, I'm trying something new, and we'll see what happens. So for now, I'm just going to finish taping all this off, doing measurements up on the top part of it, and getting that finished as well. One other thing I almost forgot to talk about was the fan that goes on the back. So I had to add these brackets to the back. There's one on each side, and I just welded those on. And what that's going to do is I actually went to Lowe's and I got a fan. This is one that I use for my own. And again, there's the bracketry. So luckily, the fan was 20-inch wide. It's a 3-speed fan, but I have it on its lowest setting. And that bracket will just hold the fan in place. Now the heat from the heat exchanger does not affect the fan whatsoever. And when I turn it on, so I have my little light switch right here. I turn it on. And it blows all that hot air through the tubes and out. And I have a little fire going in here right now. So that's where all that hot air comes out. So I had to do the same thing with this one. So I put my brackets on there, and I have a fan that I will mount when I get ready for it. So it's just one of these little, Utilitech fans, 20-inch, and it was around 55 bucks at Lowe's, but it works out perfect. So these little brackets that are on here, I'm going to take this bar off. I'm going to use the existing hardware and just mount it right to the stove. So that's where I'm at. The shop's a mess, as you can see, on the floor and dirt everywhere, but I'm working hard. I've got a couple more days to get this done and get it delivered. So let me get this finished, taped up, and we'll see what it looks like. Getting ready to paint. So I have everything masked off, and again, I'm doing orange where it's there's no paper. I'm also going to do orange around the front. I left the tubes inside black. Orange around the front there, and then orange down both sides, and hopefully that pinstripe will come off okay. I'm a little concerned that the tape may take off the black paint just because it is cold in the shop when I painted it, so I'm not sure how well it'll stick. But here's the beginning, and I'm going to get painting. Here's the first coat. It is not turning out as well as I'd hoped it would. For some reason, this paint, and it is a heat paint, it's cold in the shop. I have the stove going, but I don't know, it's not reacting as well as I expected. So I'm getting some runs. It's leaving some clear marks. So anywhere I placed a line or wrote the word top on it, for some reason it sees through that. So I'll continue. I'm going to let this dry a little bit and then put another coat on and see how it goes. I guess I'll just use the theory of more layers, less defects. Who knows? Again, it's beginner Bob, and I haven't done this before with this style of paint, so all I can do is give it a try. All right, so painting is done, and I'm still letting that dry a little bit, and then I'll work on getting that peeled off. I am a little concerned that the tape might peel off the black paint, but it's something I got to live with, and I'll try and fix the paint if that happens. So as you can see how everything turned out. In the meantime, while I'm then letting that dry, I'm going to work on the fire grate. So what I did is I went and got some of this steel. You can see the waves in the steel. I didn't do that. However, what I did do is I bent the ends. So I have a torch and I just heated that up and bent those ends. This is going to go in the back of the stove because as you're throwing wood into it, I don't want it to hit the back of the barrel wall. So I have this little barrier right here. And then I'm just welding this together. I'm going to put some short legs on it, on the front, back, and maybe in the middle to keep that thing from sagging. But that way air can circulate underneath and come up and get that fire nice and hot. I also did it by using the width of the door because I do have to be able to get this inside the door, in and out. So I will have to angle it as it goes into the door. But then when it gets in there, it'll be nice and flat. So we'll start working on that. Okay, here it is, finished product. So I think it came out great. As you can see, my uncle, who I'm actually building the stove for, he was asking for black and orange, and I think it came out successful the way he would like it. So this took about 3 weekends to do this, and it was a lot of work, I'm not going to lie. From a skill level, I would say between 1 and 5, 5 being very, very difficult and 1 being super easy. This is probably a 3 on my scale, just because you do have to do some welding, you do have to do a lot of measuring, and you know, it's a good project. If you don't have a lot of the tools, so you can use a welder, you can use a disc cutter, in general, a couple sockets, screwdriver. But if you want to get into some detail like I did, you know, get the other tools that I showed on the videos and go from there. So I'm going to deliver this probably tomorrow or the next day. I got to get a hold of my uncle on this one. But overall, this was a great project for me. I'm very happy with it. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm happy the way the paint job turned out because I wasn't sure how that was going to work. If you're interested in doing a shop stove like this, a double barrel, for instance, cost-wise, I would be prepared for about $600 total. It'll probably be just a little bit short of $600. And again, that's everything. The barrels, the tubes, the ducts, the fire brick, the extra steel that you might need, the paint, obviously, and there's a lot of other things that go on with it. But range about $600. Plan on about 3 full weekends, and then you'll have yourself a decent looking shop stove. So thanks again for tuning in. This is Beginner Bob. I'm just a regular guy coming up with ideas and coming out with ways to make new things and having fun at the same time. So get off your butt. Get out there and do something like I've done. It's a lot of fun. All right, take care.